Continuation was so that funds could never be reached, could never be raised, so that I could hire an attorney that could set me free. In May, I'll have been in custody for 4 years. In January this year, I was already in prison for 3 years, for something that I didn't do, and for something that could have proved I was innocent, if I'd just been allowed to produce witnesses. In essence, I have to hire an attorney who will subpoena the witnesses, who will make no deal to sell me out, and will let me have a fair trial. There is something else that you need to know. 3 days after I was placed in jail without bail, my attorney came to me. He said the federal prosecutor, the assistant attorney general, whatever you want to call him, the attorney solicitor, wanted to make a deal. Now remember, I was facing a state charge, not a federal charge. But this was the feds. Now all I had to do was tell him where all the Christians were hiding, identify all these people in the underground, and I could go free. And I said no. It's a matter of record that a federal proffer, this is an immunity grant for testimony, was offered me. It's on record, and it was turned down. After I was convicted in '88, I was sent to prison in Columbia. There are several. Kirkland was the name of Maine. I was called up front and I was told to sit down and wait, that the Secret Service was coming to talk to me. The woman supervising OMSA, who was on duty, found it strange that this Secret Service agent, who was supposed to be locally from Columbia, did not know where the prison was. And she just said, "Boy, they are hiring dumb people today." We had to give him instruction how to get here. When he arrived, he let it slip out that he was actually a member of President Reagan's bodyguard staff from Wash, D.C. He said that he had to leave in a couple of days to Moscow. This was right before the Reagan-Moscow trip. And that he had to get ready to set up for the president. What was he doing here? And all he wanted was the same information. Of course, it was the information. Why was the Secret Service involved? He was a member of Reagan's staff. Now after that, I was left alone. Everything was left alone for a long time. And then in '90, in the winter of '90, the FBI came. I had been moved to I had been in 3 prisons. They keep moving me around and they are fixing to move me again, is what they tell me. The FBI came. This was late at night. I was brought from my cell after everyone else was locked down, and I was taken up front. There were 2 agents of the FBI. They said they were there to question me again. Was I willing to talk? Was I willing to make a deal? I said, no. They said all this could be behind me. I said, no. They left. They've came back 3 other times. Finally they quit coming. I guess they are getting the message. But I kind of expect them to show up now that I've lost the post-conviction. As soon as I get notified in writing that I've lost this post-conviction, I expect for them to show up again, trying to know if I will make a deal. The answer is no. Isn't it amazing that I'm supposed to be this terrible rapist on a state charge, that the feds somehow have authority over this state charge and they're willing to let me just go, wipe it off the books for turning Christians who are wanted for nothing? A lot of times nothing but misdemeanor warrants, or child custody warrants where the state wants to take the kids, or for violations of court orders. A lot of these people are on the run from Christian schools where the state has sworn out warrants for these Christians because they were teaching the children, and the state decided that this was not right and so on. Little stuff, and yet they are willing to let me go for all these people plus the Christians who are hiding them out. I think you'd better wake up, brothers and sisters, because I was sent to prison without the right to a fair trial, and I won't tell you what. It could be done real easy. It could be done real easy. They control the media. They could say anything about you they want to say. They control the governments. They control the police forces. Wake up. I want to go into something else that is going on right now in the news. For over 12 years I have said that the goal of the United States government was to activate what is called Operation Garden Plot and its subplot Operation Cable Splice, which was martial law, total military control over all police forces, governments, and so on. I've said that in order to do that they wanted the populace out there to scream at the president that he wasn't doing his job of protecting them from acts of terrorism. and that they were willing to give up their constitutional rights. Now we have seen time and time 20 again, in order to stop the drug wars, to stop the drug dealers, and all the bloodshed, that they are willing to give up constitutional rights. People are willing to do it. People, when terrorism strikes, are willing to do it. Now for years, the Illuminati have tried to have the Arab countries be so outraged that they would start terrorism in the United States on a great massive rate. And our country is more susceptible than any other country for the simple reason that we are not prepared for it. We don't believe it could happen to us. And they thought they were going to be able to do it in Lebanon. They didn't pull it off. They thought by hitting Gaddafi he would act. He wasn't able to strike back. He was unable to do it. And now we are involved in a war whose sole purpose is to have those acts of terrorism launched upon us in this country. The media has hyped every act of terrorism they could dredge up in recent years. And I will leave you with that. Now people, soon you will all be in the same danger I'm in. I'm asking for your help. I assure you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ I am innocent of this charge. I state so before the Lord and you in his name. I'm innocent of this. Is it any surprise that John Todd, who did him so much damage, will be framed and sent to prison? Remember that I warned everybody about it, that it would happen 2 years before it happened. I was warned. What is so agitating in this is that Christians who should have stood by me, who knew I was innocent, didn't do it. They became so afraid that they would be gone after that they just left me here. I need your help. I need copies of this tape made. I need it passed around. I need the word to get around. I need anybody who can help to get the word around, and to help financially. Not until I can hire these non-collaborating attorneys will I get proved and get free. I could be free at this time. I could have been free 3 years ago. I never should have been sent to prison. All I would have had to do was to have help, and never had it. And I definitely desperately need this. I'm not very good. I wasn't very good at asking for finances when I was in the ministry. I couldn't even take my own offerings in the church. I need your help. I have a dear brother and sister. Name given is no longer working with him at present. One, Fritz Springmeier is their name, who have stood with me all through this. They don't have anything. They are just an everyday couple, a married couple. The man works, he works hard. He works long hours. He is not a minister. But they can't get to him. And he is willing to have this financial help come to him. See, I can't receive money, cash and checks. I can only receive a few dollars, and they have to be in a U.S. postal money order. And if they catch me receiving a lot of mail in here again, they will come down hard on me, and it just makes it impossible. This dear brother and sister in the Lord will take money, put it in the account, and whenever there is enough money, move to get my release. I am asking you to help. I am asking you, whether it is $5 or $100 or $1,000. Please, we need desperately. We need to raise the finances. We need to get me free. I never understood before as much as I understood now Paul's writings for when he was in prison to the churches for simple things, a coat, a few belongings, some finances, people who sent to him, and others who totally neglected him yet called themselves his brother and sister in Christ. It was so clear. I am asking for your help. I'm sending this tape to a couple of ministers, who after all these years I finally got their addresses again. And the Lord has just blessed me recently, and I will send this tape out. Now I'm hoping others will make copies and send it out. I'm hoping the word will get out. There is no use for me giving you my address, for they keep moving me around from prison to prison so much I may not even be here before this week is out. So let me give you how to send funds and how to contact me if you really feel you want to reach me. You can write me, and they will send me your letter, and I'll pray about it. And if I need to take the risk and write you, I'll do it. For those who wish to help, you can send cash, money orders, whatever. Since I'm not allowed to sign anything in prison, they need to be mailed out to this party. Now Fritz Springmeier, and if you would make it out to the party whose name I'm going to give you in a minute. At present, checks can be made out to Fritz Springmeier to help Johnny Todd. Put a notation on the check for what it is for. Closing square bracket. You will be surprised for a small contribution of a gift of $5 how grateful I'll be. Right now the earliest I can get out, without winning in court, is the year 2005. That's a long time, people, for something you didn't do. We just don't have that long. I've got family and loved ones, and brothers and sisters in Christ that I desperately need to be out there for. I'm asking for your help. If the Illuminati, Stromthurmond and him put so much effort to this to me, there is a reason. And I'm asking for your help. I'm asking ministers who hear this, who have newsletters, to just simply send out what is going on here, to make copies of this tape and to make it available. People, I don't have much time left in here. Right now there is a conspiracy going on, and one of the reasons I hurry to make this tape, there is a man in prison who years ago who had threatened to kill me. Amazingly, I'm just John Todd. I don't know why they 21 would want to do that. Because at that time they were not sure what kind of a scandal it would cause. They separated us, they sent us to different prisons. And they put what is called a flag on my record, saying that we couldn't ever be in the same prison together. 9 months ago, when I was fighting to gain my freedom, lawsuits and doing some different stuff myself because I didn't have an attorney, they got upset at me. They wanted to punish me by sending me to another prison. Okay. They couldn't do it because this man was at that prison. And they let me know they couldn't do it, that our records were flagged. Now this man was doing a life sentence without parole for murder. Since being in prison he has stabbed 4 people. 3 of them in the last couple years, since I've known him. He has sworn to kill me. And now he is here. A few weeks ago, he stabbed an inmate and second inmate at another institution, and instead of charging him with it, and putting him into solitary, like they had done before, they dropped the charges, and sent him to this prison. When I heard that he was here, he was being held up in the lockup in solitary waiting for bed space in my unit. He will be just a couple of cells from me. I went to the authorities here and I complained. Surprisingly, guess what, brothers and sisters? The flags on our records had disappeared. And there was no record of them ever being there. In fact, they went so far as to say there is no record in our records of us being in the same prison together. And yet we'd been in 2 prisons together and in the same building a few cells apart. And it's right there. That much is in the records. Okay. Complaints were filed and so on and so forth. And I looked right at the captain here, Captain Bird over security, and told him, you did this. You got the man who will kill me. There is no big secret about this. This doesn't happen by accident. Now at that time what was supposed to be done was that they should have shipped me. When I complained they should have shipped me. They claimed they couldn't send him anywhere else, that he's been to all these prisons and done all these things, that this was the last place they could have him. Well, they should have sent me away. Now they are claiming that none of the other prisons want to take me. Isn't it amazing that they can't ship me when this man is scheduled to move into my unit, into my prison dorm here Fry? This is Monday. They're doing this to try to kill me. What will happen? I'm in the Lord's hands. Johnny Todd repeats his request for help. They are afraid that eventually I'll get my freedom. God bless you. End of message. Tape was made and quietly gotten out. After my September newsletter came out, toward the end of this last month, in September 2 inmates who were paid to stab Johnny Todd stabbed him in the back, and then while he was on the ground, they stabbed him 3 more times. Johnny Todd lost a lot of blood, but he is back on his feet and has returned to the general prison population. He is still hopeful to gain his freedom next year, because an appeal was won, and now he is to receive his fair day in court. He has an immediate need of $800 this upcoming month for a chance to get legal help. He has to meet legal deadlines. Postscript: Johnny Todd did get moved from this prison after this tape was made and quickly gotten out. After my September newsletter came out towards the end of this last month, in September 2 inmates who were paid to stab Johnny Todd stabbed him in the back, and then when he was on the ground they stabbed him 3 more times. Johnny Todd lost a lot of blood, but he is back on his feet and has returned to the general prison population. He is still hopeful to gain his freedom next year, because an appeal was won, and now he is to receive his fair day in court. He has an immediate need of $800 this upcoming month for a chance to get legal help. He has to meet legal deadlines. Bloodlines of Illuminati by Fritz Springmeier, 1995. The DuPonts. There has been no consistency among the DuPont family members in the spelling they have employed to write their name. The correct variations in spelling the DuPont name are as follows: DuPont, 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 and DuPont de Nemours. In English the second syllable is accented. In French, neither syllable is accented. The name has tended to be spelled DuPont for the family and DuPont for business. I decided for this article to standardize the spelling in line with this tendency. A dynasty of satanic royalty sitting down to write about the DuPont reminded me of 2 other families. Recently, John Coleman, a researcher on the elite, commented to me that when he had researched the Queen of Denmark he had discovered that the royal Danish family was slipping away secretly from everyone and they were going to satanic rituals. It is also noteworthy that 5 modern kings of Denmark have been the leaders of Freemasonry in Denmark, and the Danish royal family, princes etc., have been active Masons. John Dale wrote a book, The Prince and the Paranormal, which goes into the secret occult activities of the British royal family, especially Prince Charles, but also many other royal family members too. Besides the secret occult activities of the British monarch, they have been openly leaders of Freemasonry. See the appendix of Be Wise as Serpents for a detailed chart on this. The DuPonts are similar to these families in that they too are a dynasty, they too have a very public image, and they too have a totally hidden life. In fact, the DuPonts have better control over the press's coverage of them than the British royal family. One of the clues that the family is a top satanic family are the frequency of marriages between relatives of the DuPont descendants. Few people are aware of the immense importance bloodlines play in the upper levels of Satanism. Blood is believed to carry the occult power. Unless a person has the correct blood, he or she will not rise to the highest levels of Satanism. The DuPonts have intermarried with the Balls and the Gardners. These other families are known to be involved with the Illuminati and Satanism. For instance, George W. Ball is on the important permanent steering committee of the Bilderbergers and has attended the Bilderberger meetings that I know of, starting with the original first meeting in 1954, plus in 1955, 1957, 1963, 1964, 1966, 1967, 1968, 1974, 1975. George W. Ball is also a member of CFR and the Trilateral Commission. Eliza Cazenove Gardner was a sister to a DuPont. Ozzie Cazenove Gardner was a distant cousin. Will Gardner and Bessie Gardner DuPont were cousins of the DuPonts. John W. Gardner is a 60 Illuminatus and in charge of the Rockefeller Brothers Fund. I have found the Gardners in the thick of Satanism and witchcraft. The complete facts are difficult to discover at the library. I checked out a book, DuPont by William Dutton. The book had been a gift to the library from the F. DuPont Company. I also checked out a book, Alfred I. DuPont by Joseph Frazier Wall. That book's author J. Wall was financed to write the book by the trustees of the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund. Although scholarly in appearance, it is what they don't say that can be so crucial to really understand the history of the DuPont family. When a family is worth billions, they can afford to tidy up their family histories, and keep people from spilling the beans about secrets. On May 16, 1893, the press reported the death of Alfred Victor DuPont with great laudatory comments. Alfred, known as Fred, had been in business in Louisville, KT, and was widely known in the area as a philanthropist. Louisville's main paper, the Louisville Commercial, gave the public a totally fictitious story about how Alfred Victor DuPont died, along with many pages of the highest praise. If it hadn't been for the honesty of the Inquirer, a Cincinnati paper not to be confused with today's national tabloid by the same name Inquirer, the public would not have learned what really had happened. The false story said that Fred died of apoplexy while visiting his brother Biderman. The DuPont family still maintains this fiction is true, although all the facts of the case are blatantly known, and were public knowledge to quite a number of people whose lives were involved with what actually happened. Both Fred DuPont and his nephew Coleman DuPont were regular customers at the most expensive house of prostitution in the area, Maggie Payne's Bordello. Although rich, Fred was not willing to help support a distraught prostitute raise the child she was sure he had sired. So she shot Fred in the heart. Coleman DuPont, who was familiar with Maggie's, soon went down to Maggie's, retrieved the body with a hearse and took the body to Biderman's house. There the coroner was willing to lie on the death certificate that the death was caused by effusive apoplexy. It is most likely Coleman made that lie worth his effort. Henry Watterson, editor of the Courier-Journal, although he later admitted he knew the real story of the murder, went ahead and printed the false story on behalf of the DuPonts. This article starts out with this anecdote to make a point: the 13 top families do control the press and are very sensitive to any negative publicity of any kind. Not only are their satanic activities deeply hidden, but even just the normal everyday sinfulness or human soapbox drama of their lives is deeply hidden. By the way, Coleman DuPont, an extremely hedonistic man, is one of the DuPonts I strongly suspect was into Satanism. Further secrecy has been obtained by working through trusted proxies. Today, a key proxy is the Jew Irving Saul Shapiro. The DuPont family is represented in a number of groups by Irving Saul Shapiro, who is on the Council of Foreign Relations. Irving S. Shapiro is a key person who has been the go-between to coordinate the activities of the Rockefellers, the DuPonts, and the Watson families. Watson family members who are 6 degrees Illuminati are mentioned in the 1st of January 93 newsletter. Shapiro was a member of Carter's Advisory Council on Japan-U.S. Economic Relations, is a trustee of the University of Delaware, director of the Jewish Federation of Delaware, director of IBM, which is a Watson-Rockefeller business, director of Citicorp, Rothschilds and Rockefellers headed in the past by 6 degrees Illuminatis, CFR member Bilderberger Walter Wristin, and the U.S. Trade and Economic Council, which Rockefeller plays a big part of. Shapiro is always director of Continental American Insurance Co. International Business Machines, under IBM. Irving Saul Shapiro was chairman of the DuPont Company. Beginning at the beginning, the biographies of the DuPont family usually begin with the marriage of Samuel DuPont to Anne Alexandrine Montecanon in 1737 in Paris, France. Although Anne was a Huguenot, she was a medium with the spirit world. Anne came from an ancient noble family that lived in Burgundy, France. It is quite possible that it was Anne's bloodline that gave the DuPonts their occult power. Anne's bloodline may possibly tie into the House of David. At any rate, Samuel and Anne's son was the first DuPont to rise to greatness, and the first DuPont that can be connected directly to the Illuminati. Samuel and Anne's son was Pierre Samuel DuPont. Later Pierre Samuel added de Nemours to his name to prevent confusion between him and OTH, a French legislature's name DuPont. Pierre Samuel DuPont was a genius. Pierre's mother taught him to be a medium with spirits, but early on Pierre had to deny it publicly. His father Samuel could not understand the boy's genius, such as his ability at age 12 to translate Greek and Latin at sight. When Pierre's mother died when he was 16, he no longer had a parent in the family who could understand him, and after getting one of his frequent beatings from his father, he ran away, and was spared near starvation by his uncle Pierre de Montchentin. Initially, Pierre was a watchmaker, but within a short time he attracted the attention of several top Illuminati for his ability to write good tracts and articles that advocated various economic and political views that they wanted promoted. Pierre joined the Freemasons, and at some point was Illuminized, as most of the French lodges became. Although Pierre went through severe financial difficulties after the French Revolution, he regularly made payments to Masonic organizations in France. Besides being friends with all the famous Masons of the time, one Mason brother of his worthy of note is the French astronomer Lalande, who helped hide him during the Revolution. Besides being friends with all the famous Masons of the time, one Mason brother of his worthy of note is the French astronomer Lalande, who helped hide him during the Revolution. Someone very powerful protected Pierre Samuel during the French Revolution. This is hinted at by historian Pierre Joly, although Joly never gives his protector's name. I believe he was protected because Dupont was part of the inner satanic hierarchy. He was also protected by the daughter of Swiss financier Jacques Necker. This daughter was Madame Germaine de Staël. The Madame was a close friend of Pierre Samuel and she operated a famous salon, Cat House. Madame de Staël was nothing less than an intimate friend of Saint Simon. She shared his occult revolutionary ideas. Henry de Street. Simon was a student and friend of Jacques Rigaud-Bazin, who was associated with the inner circle of several occult-based revolutionary groups during Pierre Dupont's time in France. Street. Simon was the author of The New Christianity, which foreshadowed the creation of international communism. He also wrote in the early 1800s The Globe and the Reorganization of the European Community, laying out ideas and plans for European unity. In the early 1800s, the Saint Simonians suggested in the early 1800s that the date 2000 be the target date for the new order. In order to rearrange the world into the new order, a number of items and stages needed to occur. 2 canals sewn through the Suez and 1 through Panama were needed, they said, to create interdependence between the nations. They also suggested a high dam on the Nile. They suggested the technological transformation of the Earth, and the biological creation of a new, androgynous humanoid. Androgynous beings are being produced in underground facilities. They are the small greys used to fly the saucers. Progress would be brought about by a series of revolutions. Study from Fire in the Minds of Men by James H. Billington to understand how the occult fraternities have created all the revolutions since the French Revolution. Street. Simon, an Illuminatist, wanted to have a child with Madame de Staël, which would become the Antichrist. It didn't happen, but anyway, it is significant that the person who personally intervened during the French Revolution and saved Pierre Samuel Dupont's life was Madame de Staël. Necker, along with Lafayette, would later loan Dupont large sums of money for him to try out his schemes in business and in forming a communist society. It's interesting that the Physiocrats journal was Les Ephémérides du Citoyen, and the title has astrological occult undertones. On Jan 1, 1769, Pierre Samuel Dupont took over the journal's management. He became a key leader in France advocating a new order. Pierre Samuel Dupont believed in Plato's idea of government, which included a philosopher king. Pierre Samuel was deist. He spoke of God, but he meant nature's deistic God, not a personal God. He believed nature was a higher God than his mechanical deist God. Notice that Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence also wrote, "Nature's God." This is because the deists like Jefferson and Dupont believed nature was the highest God. The ambiguity of meaning has permitted people to think Jefferson was referring the Christian God in the Declaration of Independence. It is a common occurrence that Christians assume that others who use words that they use think like the Christians. Even today, many New Agers have an easy task to snow Christians. For instance, they just say, "I believe in Christ." The Masonic reference book 10.000 Famous Freemasons, put out by the Missouri Lodge of Research, provides this about Pierre Samuel DuPont. When 23, he published 2 pamphlets on finances, which attracted the attention of the celebrated Quesnay. He then expounded the doctrines of Quesnay's school, the Physiocrats. Went to Poland in 1774 at the request of King Stanislaus Augustus, a Freemason, to organize a general system of national education. When Turgot became Controller General of French finances, DuPont was named Inspector General of Commerce. He was recalled by Vergennes to assist in negotiating with England the treaty to accord independence to the U.S. In 1789 he was a member of the States with his family, and at Jefferson's request, started on a plan for national education in this country. He returned to France in 1802 and was instrumental in promoting the Treaty of 1803, by which Louisiana was sold to the U.S. Pierre Samuel was a key figure in attempts to create a national education system in both Poland and the new U.S. A national education system was a Masonic, Illuminati goal to control education and take it out of the hands of sincere Christians. Jefferson, who was a Grand Orient Mason of the famous Nine Sisters Lodge, and apparently a key Illuminatus, was a close friend of Pierre Samuel, and was instrumental or at several key points in Pierre Samuel's life when he needed help. Jefferson arranged for the first gunpowder order, which was a government order, when the DuPonts went into the gunpowder business. Benjamin Franklin, a key leader of several secret occult fraternal groups, was also a close friend of Pierre Samuel. When Benjamin Franklin arrived at 1776 in France, one of the first people who sought out to visit with was Pierre Samuel DuPont. During the next year after that, DuPont was a frequent visitor to Franklin's residence in the village of Passy. In 1783, DuPont expected to sit with Franklin at the treaty table in Paris, but John Adams got the Americans to sign a treaty with Britain without France's involvement. Alexander Hamilton, whose role in the conspiracy is now known, was DuPont's lawyer in the U.S. The next generation. During the second year of Pierre Samuel's marriage to Maid Lady, Victor Maid was born with the Marquis de Mirabeau as his godfather. Victor Marie DuPont (1767–1827) was an aide-de-camp to Illuminatus Lafayette from 1789 to 1792. Whether Victor was a Mason in France before the family came to the United States in 1800, I do not know. Victor Marie DuPont soon got involved in Freemasonry in the United States after arriving. The following are some of the highlights to his secret Masonic career according to Masonic records. 1808 – signed a Masonic petition to create a lodge at Angelica, NY. 1813 – joined Washington Lodge No. 1 of Delaware. 1814 – joined Knights Templars of Wilmington, Delaware. 1819 – Grand Marshal of the Grand Lodge of Delaware. Also 1822, 1823, 1825, 1827, 1825 – Grand Treasurer of the Grand Lodge of Delaware. Pierre Samuel had 2 more sons. Paul François died at age 1 month, and Eleuthère Lrna. Eleuthère Lrna followed his father's steps in getting illuminated. Eleuthère Lrna was a prominent outspoken Jacobin. The Jacobins, the Duc d'Orléans, Grand Master of the Grand Orient of France, that is head of all the French Masons, along with 2 other key Masons Talleyrand and Mirabeau, started the Jacobins. According to the book The War of the Antichrist with the Church, a book made from the lectures of George Dillon, Dublin, Ireland, M. H. Gill & Son, 1885, where Dillon lectures on the French Revolution, he states that both Talleyrand and Mirabeau were key Illuminati. The name of the original lodge of the Jacobins was changed to Club Breton and then Jacobin Club. The Jacobins were basically an Illuminized type of Freemasonry. The president of the Jacobin Club was the Freemason Georges-Jacques Danton, who was a member of the famous and powerful Nine Sisters Lodge. Nine Sisters or Nine Muses is what the Pleiades is called. Lafayette was a Jacobin, as well as the key players in the French Revolution. A very secret body of 300 key Freemasons ruled France secretly during this period, according to the autobiography of Wolfetone, Pub. by R. Barry O'Brien, 1893. Robespierre was both a Freemason and an Illuminatus. In fact, he was both a disciple of Weishaupt and Rousseau. Prussian Baron Anacharsis Clootz was also a Freemason and Illuminatus. He also was a disciple of Weishaupt and understood better what Weishaupt was trying to accomplish. If one studies what these men taught, you will discover it is what was later known as socialism and communism. The original idea for all the French Revolution started with the satanic hierarchy. In November 1793, the true colors of this satanic-inspired business can be seen in the campaign against religion, where anyone who was a priest in France was killed, and the Illuminati posted one of its mottos in public: "Death is an eternal sleep." Eyewitnesses testify that Satan has a very detailed plan which he entrusts to his very select few at the top. Much of what seems coincidence and unrelated is actually according to a very clever, diabolical plan. Eleuthère Lrna Dupont was a major printer for the Jacobins. He was a convinced deist and worshipped nature too. A POWDERMAN becomes director of the National Bank later in the United States, after successfully setting up the best gunpowder factory in the world. Eleuthère René Dupont was selected along with his friend Nicholas Biddle to be a director of Hamilton's creation, the United States Bank. Remember that Esther was also selected as a director of this national bank. The Mason Stephen Girard (1750–1831) initiated into Masonry in 1788 in Charleston, S.C. Helped establish the Second Bank of United States in 1816 and served as its director. Girard had amassed an $9 million fortune by the time of his death. He was born in France, and become a sea captain. Where his money came from is somewhat of a mystery. He gave large sums of his money to Masonic charity. Early years in America. On Jan. 3, 1800, the DuPont tribe arrived in the United States with grandiose plans. Part of the plans were to create a new society. While Victor Marie and his father pursued grandiose schemes that tailed miserably, Eleuthère Lrna DuPont started a gunpowder business in Delaware. Irene's success can be attributed to several factors. The French government gave him top-secret machinery and plans to produce the best gunpowder possible in that day. It was state-of-the-art technology, and they supplied manpower to help get started. The DuPonts had friends in various places that helped them in numerous ways, getting financing, business, land, etc. Eleuthère Lrna Dupont was intelligent, worked very hard and worked with patience. If he hadn't had so many commendable qualities, then the DuPont family may have sunk back in history, and another family taken their place. A royal dynasty. The DuPonts are a dynasty of kings. They have been called kings, and rightly so, even if people have been unaware that they are a dynasty of Illuminati kings. I do not know which particular men have served during the satanic rituals. The family has always had the head of the family. It may be that the most powerful DuPont may also secretly serve as the highest Satanist. I don't know who has been representing the family at the highest levels of secret Satanism. I suspect or surmise it has not been the public head of the family in modern times. But I can list the public head of the family as it passed down through time. Persons below. Years as head of family generation coming to America: Pierre Samuel DuPont 1739 to 1817, first Eleuthère Alrna DuPont 1817 to 1834, second Alfred Victor DuPont 18,341,850, third Henry DuPont 1850 to 1889, third Henry A. DuPont 1889, fourth. These men had great authority over the tribe of DuPonts. The DuPonts had family council, where even the women had voting rights. The DuPonts, like the Rothschilds, helped set up their children's marriages, and many of the early ones were to cousins. For instance, much to the delight of the DuPonts, Sophie Madeleine DuPont married her cousin Samuel Francis DuPont in 1833. Two of Sophie's drawings occur later in this article. The family owned everything in common, and distributed according to needs and according to the contribution that each could give to the family business. The James Biederman, the son of Evelina DuPont Biederman, went on to France, and his descendants would give the DuPonts a lineage in France. One of the families that intermarried and were close friends with the DuPonts was the Cazenoves family. Both families were close friends with Thomas Jefferson and Albert Gallatin. I have concluded that both Thomas Jefferson and Albert Gallatin were Illuminati. Further, I discovered in a 40-volume set on American statesmen in Volume 13, p.386, that Albert Gallatin claimed to be descended from the ancient Roman consul Gallatinus. Incredible as it may seem, the black nobility have kept track of their bloodlines. The same people ruling the world today are in many ways the descendants of the rulers in past ages. Antoine Charles Cazenove, born in Geneva, SW, was a business partner with Albert Gallatin. During the War of 1812, the DuPont gunpowder factory, since it was the primary American powder company, was the known target for the British to destroy. However, the British never attacked it. The DuPonts had organized a local militia called the Brandywine Rangers. Interestingly, their militia flag was a beehive on white silk. Lafayette visited the DuPonts in Delaware the summer of 1825. Another important Mason who would visit the DuPonts was Henry Clay, who was the American Secretary of State and head of the Whig Party. Henry Clay was Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Kentucky and Grand Orator for the G. L. 1806–09. He was one of the Freemasons involved in a high-level meeting that used the U.S. Senate chambers on Mar. 9, 1822 for their meeting. If the DuPonts were already one of the primary top families, it may well be Clay was coming to them for guidance on how to steer the nation. The DuPonts played a role too in the building of the American Capitol, which was laid out and constructed with numerous occult patterns. The next generation, Pierre Samuel's grandchildren Eleuthère Alrna DuPont, had a daughter, Sophie Madeleine DuPont, 1810–1888. Sophie was also her mother's name. Sophie Madeleine DuPont, her name Sophia, is popular with Maria, wrote diaries, journal, voluminous correspondence. Sophie also drew hundreds of drawings and sketches, many of them caricatures of people. Of her sketches, this article reproduces two of them which bear importance to this newsletter. The first is a drawing by Sophie DuPont of one of the DuPonts dressed up like Satan with long paper horns and a tail. Interestingly, according to a 12 December 1829 letter by Sophie to one of her relatives, Sophie comments that the costume of Satan was mistaken for Old Nick. See the article on Satin in this newsletter for evidence of the connection between Satan and Santa. The next drawing is a drawing that went with a letter from Sophie to Clementina Smith, the 21st of July 1837, which is a self-portrait of what Sophie calls blackies, black servants, who carried her to her bath in a special chair. This drawing is included to show how wealthy the DuPonts were within a short time after coming to Delaware. S. A. Alfred Victor DuPont, who took over as head of both the family and the factories making gunpowder, was married to Meta. Meta was into Swedenborgianism, which was a type of mystical religious Freemasonry that was based on the Swedish Mason Swedenborg's teachings. Alfred Victor apparently didn't feel anything negative toward this. His wife Meta organized a Swedenborg church in town. Around the Civil War times, the DuPonts became less identified with deism and more identified with the Episcopal Church. Joanna Smith DuPont was instrumental in this change. One of the families that the DuPonts would marry with was the Cazenoves, who were Episcopalians, and some members were, I suspect, involved with the Illuminati. Christ Church was built off the DuPont communal property for Episcopal services. By the Civil War, the state of Delaware was lock, stock and barrel under the control of the DuPonts and their friends the Bayards, the Salisburys, and the Grays. In this 20th century, the DuPonts have gotten firmer control. Because the state of Delaware is controlled by the DuPonts, it is worthwhile to examine some of the people the DuPonts and their elite friends have placed into office. This is a very unfinished skimpy list. I have done only a little research in this direction. Governors of Delaware, chronological order: John Collins, Gov. 1819 to 1822, Collins family; Caleb P. Bennett, Gov. 1832 to 1836, Freemason; Thomas Stockton, Gov. 1844, high-ranking Freemason; Charles C. Stockley, Gov. 1883 to 87, Freemason; Benjamin Biggs, Gov. 1887-1891, Freemason; Pierre Samuel DuPont, IV, 1977, also U.S. Representative, and other Gov. Physicians, U.S. Senators of Delaware, alphabetical order of surnames: T. Coleman DuPont, Sen. 921 to 192. Henry A. DuPont, Sen. 1895-1896, 1906 to 1916. In 1896, the U.S. Senate rejected his election and therefore Henry DuPont's credentials due to proof of voter fraud. Delaware legislature, Republican, replaced Henry, a Republican, with a Democrat. But in 1899, when the Senate seat became available and another one in 1901-2, they could not come to any agreement on a selection of a senator because Henry A. DuPont and John Edwards O'Sullivan Addicts, the two Republican leaders, were fighting so much. Consequently, in 1899, Delaware only had one U.S. senator, and from 1901 to 1903, Delaware had no U.S. senators. L. Heislip Ball, 190,345, 1-919-25, also served L. as state treasurer, Freemason. James H. Hughes, Sen. 1937-42, Freemason, also was Del. Sec. of State. Richard R. Kenny, Sen. 1897-1901, Freemason, also adjective. General of Del. Arnold Nowden, Sen. 1830-36, Freemason, Grand Master of the G. L. of Del. Also State Senator, 36-39, John G. Townsend, Sen. 1929-42, Freemason, banker, alternate delegate to the U.N. General Assembly in 1946. James M. Tunnell, Sen. 1941-47, Freemason, 32 degrees, also lawyer. John Wales, Sen. 1849-51, Freemason, Prey of Nat. Bank of Wilmington and Brandywine, Sec. of State of Del. 1845-49. William V. Roth, Jr. Sen. 1971, CFR, Trilateral Commission, also on the Rep. Nat. Com. The DuPont gunpowder factories dominated the industry. Within only a short time after getting started in 1802, they had the best quality gunpowder in the world for the general market. Every war the United States has fought starting in 1802 with the war against Tripoli, today Libya, and the Barbary pirates until the incursion into Somalia this last year, the American military has depended upon DuPont gunpowder. Henry DuPont (1812–1889) took over command of the gunpowder manufacturing when he was 38. He was very authoritarian and was known as Boss Henry. His narrow-minded, backward and authoritarian thinking ran the DuPont Company into the ground in spite of their control of the gunpowder market. When he died, Alfred I. DuPont, Pierre Samuel DuPont II (1870–1954), and Thomas Coleman DuPont (1863–1930) took over various DuPont manufacturing affairs. This triumvirate revived the aging DuPont factories. They bought out the rest of the gunpowder manufacturers, giving them an absolute monopoly in the munitions industry. They modernized the DuPont factories and put the DuPont businesses back into top shape. On August 22, 1857, the DuPonts lost their first family member to an explosion, Alexis DuPont. The DuPonts had always been in the forefront on safety at their gunpowder factories, but that did not prevent him from having to suffer repeated explosions over the years. An explosion at a gunpowder factory is easily set off and very deadly. The tutor that was hired in 1852 to tutor the DuPont children, R. Page Williamson, described in his letters to Virginia that the DuPont children were very spoiled and difficult to work with. In 1872, Henry DuPont brought together Laughlin and Rand and Hazard Powder Co. in order to form a gunpowder trade association. What the association did was to eliminate competition between the three largest manufacturers of gunpowder, and create a monopoly for this cartel. Eventually DuPont bought out the other two plus numerous other small gunpowder companies. I suggest that everyone who believes that the DuPonts and the rest of the elite are capitalists should take another look at history. These men do not believe in capitalism, they believe in monopolies, which boils down to the same thing that occurs under communism. When these people describe their setting up a monopoly, they call it bringing order and stability to a fragmented and chaotic industry. In 1889, Alfred I. DuPont attempted to bribe French officers in charge of the production of smokeless gunpowder to give the secrets to him. But no amount of bribe would work, as the Frenchmen knew they would lose their lives if they gave the secrets to him. The British were not any more helpful. UFE was not all peaches and cream. Fred was murdered. William DuPont (1855–1928) was trapped in a marriage with a DuPont cousin, May DuPont, that he didn't want to be married to. Louis Cazenove DuPont, a handsome, intelligent young, committed suicide with a bullet in the library at the Wilmington Club. Alfred was shot in the face by accident on a hunting trip. The DuPont family had their share of heartaches, broken marriages, insanity, etc. When Mary Bellon married into the family, she brought some Jewish blood. As a major part of the budding military-industrial complex, the DuPonts during the 19th century had to work with the Army and Navy. The Army and Navy convinced them to implement a contract with the Koppel Co. in Belgium for smokeless powder, which when the formula was received was found to be inferior to what the American were already producing. However, this whole episode ended with the DuPonts going with their own formula and setting up a new plant at Carneys Point, New Jersey. This hits the highlights of the family history in their first 100 years in this nation. To celebrate their first 100 years, every living descendant of the first Pierre Samuel was invited to a great banquet. A building was built to house them. They numbered over 100. At each person's table setting was a special gift of a gold coin, prepared especially to commemorate this centennial. On Jan. 1, 1900, the DuPont tribe celebrated. The DuPonts are shrouded in so much secrecy that their secrecy is not even known. When Eugene DuPont, the chief executive of the family gunpowder, high-explosive business, died near the turn of the century, none of the other DuPonts had hardly even a vague idea of how much the company was worth or what assets it had. At that time the DuPonts had powder plants in PA, Del, Iowa, and TN. The DuPonts are much the same today, except that their assets are perhaps 10 times better hidden, not only from outsiders but from themselves. The DuPonts have in general made their money the hard way by working and producing, in contrast to the other top families. The DuPonts are to be commended on this, even if at times they have been very tight on what they have given their workers. The DuPonts have also shown an amazing ability to keep their dynasty alive. There seems to be an increasing invisibility to their family. Hitting PAYDIRT, one of the people who had been involved for a short time with the Illuminati, and is now a Christian, told me that they could remember the name the Society of the Cincinnati and that they knew nothing about the organization, but that it had something to do with the Illuminati. But what is this organization? Without anything but the name, I began my investigation. At first look it seemed like some old ladles genealogy group who are descendants of revolutionary soldiers. However, as I carried out what promised to be a long-term research project on the society, it began to appear that something big was behind this organization. One reference stated, the Society of the Cincinnati 1783 it is likely that no Englishman feels a greater sense of pride in being a Knight of the Garter, or Scotsman, a Knight of the Thistle, than an American feels in being a member of the Society of the